This is Tyrese Halliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
Happy Thursday, Pacer Nation. Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Golden. I'm joined today by the one and only, the 5:30 a.m. himself, Michael J. Facci. Facci, how's it going?
Catch me early in the morning, if you're going to catch me at all. It's going to be early, but that's how the early bird gets the worm. And I think that right now, hey, we're in the offseason, NBA Finals, one game in. It's given me flashbacks of the good old days, and that's kind of one of the things that I want to get back to. So we have a lot to discuss this offseason. But Alex, you want to tell everyone what we're talking about today?
Yeah, we're not going to talk about the NBA Finals because I still have too much PTSD from last year, but we're talking about somebody the Pacers have eliminated twice in the playoffs the last two seasons, and that's Giannis Antetokounmpo. And look, we've been hearing all year long that Giannis is on the move. He's going to get traded. But now it kind of feels like it's about to happen. I did see something on like Tuesday, I believe it was, where there was like a report where Giannis was saying, "Oh, I love Milwaukee. They want to, build a restaurant after me." I'm like, okay, this is just getting to the point where I expect it to happen sooner than later. There's a lot more smoke than there has been previously, and it's not just Shams putting out stuff. So, with that being said, there was a report that Giannis wanted to be traded to a team in the Eastern Conference, did not want to go to the West. And so I told you, I said, hey, let's come up with a top 5 ranking of the worst places Giannis could go that could potentially impact the Pacers' chances of getting back to the NBA Finals. And Facci, maybe this is a little bit of a homerism in me, but do you think that some of these teams that are looking to acquire Giannis aren't just looking at Wemby as a threat, but they're looking at the Pacers as, oh man, this team fully healthy could be a threat to us getting to the NBA Finals?
I'd love to believe that. I really would. Sometimes it's just out of sight, out of mind. And, I don't know if they're necessarily saying like, hey, look, Indiana, they're definitely coming. We should be on their radar, but I don't think it's enough to really affect someone's like entire offseason to say, hey, like the Pacers are coming, like a storm's coming. So it's funny, you mentioned about Giannis. I'm on fanspo.com where they have, their trade machine. Giannis is the number one trending player. So trade. Number 2, Trey Murphy III. So it's interesting. Those are names that we have discussed, recently. And I do think you mentioned all year long we've heard Giannis could be traded. Feels like for the last few years we've been hearing that, but it feels it's ultra real. I feel like the relationship between the Bucks and Giannis have finally hit that point where now the team is no longer good. The books look rough. You're lacking the draft picks. Giannis ain't getting younger, and I even heard it was like when they kept him out against his will when he wanted to play last year, there was a lot of money that was lost like in an endorsement deal. So I just feel like they've kind of hit the end of the road, and for the Bucks, I don't know how much longer you could really just keep being a mediocre-ish team before you say, you know what, we got to hit the reset here. Because, like I said, when you're thin on picks, the cap situation doesn't look good. Sometimes the only way out is unfortunately trading your best player.
Honestly, like this isn't me trying to wish the Bucks would be irrelevant. This is more so just me looking at it from a fan perspective. I would much rather just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's start over. Let's start fresh. He got us a championship. He'll be forever loved in Milwaukee. Let's just move on and let's go out. And they won the in-season tournament, so like they've got that as well. Another thing to celebrate. Yeah. But what I'm getting at is let's move on. Let's not have this, hanging over our heads for the next couple of years. And let's get a good rebuild because I do think there are a lot of teams out there that have some interesting trade packages that could really help the future of this Bucks team. So with that being said, I want to get into what teams are the scariest, but I think we should start off and work our way up to who is the biggest threat to the Pacers or the most scary team to add Giannis. So we'll start at number 5. This is the least of the 5 here. Did you have 5 teams that you ranked? Or was okay?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes I'm good for like a 6th. But
I got a 7th one.
But yeah, I know. Sometimes I'm like, all right, I got 2 honorable mentions, which kind of defeats the point of an honorable mention. But
half the East.
Yes, exactly. Half the East. But in this scenario, I kept it just to 5 teams. So at number 5 on my list, I have the Orlando Magic.
Okay.
And I think when you look at the Magic, like this is a team that already has a lot of good players. Actually, they're going to be a little bit strapped for draft picks, but they have the players in order to be able to facilitate this deal. Like, would they be willing to trade Paulo as their main piece? So therefore, they don't have to offer really many picks at all. And salary wise, it's not too far off. They could make a trade for like a Paulo and Jonathan Isaac, and that works out salary wise. And I think Paulo might be, that's the type of player that Milwaukee can like do a rebuild around. That's a number one
A
draft
quick
pick.
rebuild.
Exactly. Like that is, he might arguably be potentially the best player you could get in a trade for Giannis when you factor in age and all of that good stuff. So I think that would still leave Orlando with a really good core where you could have, Suggs and Bane and Franz and Giannis and Wendell Carter Jr. Like there's still a lot of talent where all of a sudden Orlando could be a very, very scary team.
I have Orlando a little bit higher because of the
Okay.
players you just mentioned. I think they
Sure.
have a little bit more depth. And for me at number 5, this is where I have the Miami Heat. And
Okay.
a lot of people, it seems like he wants to go to Miami. I don't know. It seems like that's the hottest team right now. And I think that's the best case scenario for the Pacers because
I think so.
right now they don't have any great guards. Like if
Nope.
they're having to trade Tyler Hero in this deal, which is what people are saying, and then Khalil Ware,
That's
and
what I
then
would imagine.
probably Jaime Jaquez Jr. or even a Nikola Jovic, like something along those lines, like plus 3 or 4 picks. Who do they really have? Like Davion Mitchell, Andrew Wiggins. They bring Norm Powell back, Giannis and Bam. Like that's like a better version of the Bucks, but still to me not someone that makes you feel like, oh my God. I know they have Spoelstra, but come on, like the Spoelstra Heat culture, that whole thing, it doesn't seem like it's as powerful as it
Wearing
once
off.
was. It
Exactly.
definitely has wore off. And look, Giannis is somebody that's been injury prone the last couple of years. I don't love the non-shooting aspect of this team because like Bam's a very streaky shooter. Wiggins to me is a very streaky shooter as well. So you throw a front court out there that's good defensively, but is very like up and down offensively. They would definitely have to make more tweaks to the roster for me to feel like, oh, they're an actual threat. So I think Miami is at 5, but since you already mentioned Orlando, I'll just go ahead and say it for number 4. That's where I had him number 4. The thing is, like you mentioned, they don't have the picks to go out there and trade for him, so it seems maybe like less likely. But at the end of the day, Paulo Banchero is a for sure thing compared to, oh, maybe potential future picks for where you're trading one of the best players, if not the best player in the East to. So I just kind of look at it from that perspective. Orlando's front office is very familiar with Giannis as well. They're previously with Milwaukee. The new head coach they just hired from San Antonio, he worked with Giannis at one point as well. So there's just a lot of things adding up, and you only really have to get rid of Paulo to make the deal work. You got a lot of good pieces. Now, Jalen Suggs has not played great. The contract looks atrocious. Could they include Jalen Suggs in a trade somewhere else to upgrade there? Sure, but like Desmond Bane, Giannis, Wendell Carter Jr., and Franz Wagner with Anthony Black, that's a really good 5. But that's very threatening. And potentially they could be higher than 4 for me. But I have another team or two a little bit higher. So with that being said, Fletch, I'm rambling here a little bit, but I just think Orlando has a team that could really be very aggressive. And I think by getting this new coach, what is the name of their coach? Is it Sweeney? Is that right?
I'm going to have to look it up.
It's Sean Sweeney off the top of my head, but is that right? Okay.
That's his last name. So let's see. So no. So actually, I'm sorry. I had it opposite. I typed in the Bucks head coach, but that's Taylor Jenkins. So
that is an old man move right there, Facci.
Hey, I ain't getting younger, man. I'm telling you, I am
know.
aging by the day. And of course, people could say, well, isn't that normal? Everybody is. But now I'm getting old, man. Sean Sweeney is the name of the Orlando Magic head coach.
Okay. People are probably screaming at this.
Real quick on that. Were you surprised to see Jamal Mosley get snatched up as quick as he did by the Pelicans?
Honestly, it's the Pelicans and Joe Dumars.
It's so Pelicans. It's so like,
this guy was awful here offensively. Let's bring him into our team.
Like you just set the bar at we just want to get to the first round. Like that is now essentially what that hiring. That's what it meant to me. Is like if you can get us to the first round, that's where our hopes and aspirations are. And when I saw that, I was like, this is why teams stay bad.
No, I mean honestly, like they would be much better off with like a Jason Kidd type, or even like. Let's reopen the Jeff Van Gundy tree. Or let's try maybe a Sam Cassell, who's been a longtime assistant. Like that needs an opportunity.
That's rough. I don't know why he's just never going to get a job.
I feel like he's blackballed from getting a head coaching job for whatever reason.
I don't know what it is, but yeah, I mean, it felt like a couple of years ago he was like really in the running for jobs, and it seems like that's kind of gone quiet the last few years. So interesting. But Okay, so, going back to what you mentioned before with Miami, I didn't have them on my list just
Oh,
because I'm
wow.
wondering if the ship has kinda sailed a bit on Miami. I just feel like if you're gonna tell me that they're gonna be committing, like, $110 million to Bam and Giannis, I'm like, "You're gonna have problems elsewhere." That's a lot of money in that group, and they're obviously 2 very good players, but then what's left around them? And that's
Yeah.
kinda where I'm like, I just feel like for Miami, sure, they're gonna have interest, and I think that if you're talking about the old school Heat culture, then, like, yeah, Giannis could have been a perfect fit there in the past, to really, like, turn him into the best version of himself, but I didn't have Miami on my list. I had Orlando at 5, like I mentioned. At number 4, this is where I have the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think Cleveland is a team that they gotta do something. If you bring back Harden and this roster, that ship sailed. I feel like that they are just at a point where, like, you cannot bring this same roster back, and Evan Mobley could another be one of those guys similar in the Paulo boat where, like, that might be the best individual young player that you could get to potentially start to try and build around, and, Mobley makes some pretty big money. It's about, like, $42 million per year, so you are able to find ways to make this trade work, but I just feel like for the Cavs, like, you really wanna win a championship, this is probably that move that you really gotta make in order to be able to, get over the hump. So, I don't know if you
Yeah.
have Cleveland on your list or not, but I got 'em at 4.
I did not have Cleveland on my
Okay.
list, and the reason why is because the Cavaliers just reportedly came out and said, "Hey, we're gonna keep it and run it back with James
That's what it
Harden,
sounds
Donovan
like.
Mitchell,
I think it's
Jared
a bit
Allen." I mean, why? I don't know,
I
but
don't know.
I don't agree with the decision. I mean, I tweeted about it and said, "This is great news for the rest of the East because while they might make the playoffs, they clearly don't have enough to win a title." I mean, good
How do
grief.
you see what Harden did and say, "Oh, yeah, I want more?" Like, if anything, this is your opportunity to be like, "You know what? We traded Garland, maybe that was a mistake, but, like, Harden's hitting free agency." Like, I just feel like at this point, you commit 2 to 3 years from him, he ain't gonna be getting better. He can get more familiar, but, like, time and time again, we've just seen that this guy brings his worst game to the playoffs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, like, I think James Harden is a good player, don't get me wrong, but, like, I worry about them a little bit. That's all I'm gonna say. I just worry about them a lot, but okay, so number 3 on our board now, I guess. This is where I have the Atlanta Hawks. I don't know if you had the
Okay.
Atlanta Hawks
I
on.
almost did. I went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and I decided to just leave them off my list.
So the reason why is the 2027 first round pick that the Hawks have, it is actually Milwaukee's. So if they could give that back to Milwaukee, now Milwaukee can control what they do this year, what spot they get in now with the new reform lottery odds. Like it's not great, but they have that. They have the 8th overall pick in this year's draft as well. They've got all their future picks and a ton of seconds. And I don't know what it would take salary wise. Maybe a Jonathan Kuminga could get traded there. Who knows? Corey Kispert, Buddy Hield, Ricochet. Like there's options where they could throw in enough to get Giannis, but I just think a Jalen Johnson, Onyeka Okongwu, Nikhil Alexander Walker, Giannis Antetokounmpo team could be really, really dangerous. And I would be very afraid of that team because I feel like they are I mean, if they bring CJ McCollum back as well, that's a pretty good 5. And I think that even if you keep Dyson Daniels, like there's your 6. And that to me, like that was a team that put up the best fight against the team representing the East in the NBA Finals. And so, in terms of the Eastern Conference teams, so I just think that they're close and they're getting closer to really taking that next step. I don't know if I love Jalen Johnson and Giannis together, but I think there's still a way they can make it work because Giannis a lot of times is like a point forward anyway. So positions be danged. I think that they can make it work, and I think that if you give Quinn Snyder a Giannis type player, they're gonna find ways to really, blossom. I like Quinn Snyder. I do. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, look,
they just haven't had the talent.
give anybody a Giannis type
Well, that's
player, they
fair.
better find a way, it's, they don't grow
Hey,
on
well,
trees,
you know who couldn't find a way? Doc Rivers. Okay.
and everybody else beforehand with Milwaukee because they've just been they've gone through like 3 or 4 coaches in the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. But I looked at Atlanta and I thought to Jalen Johnson and Giannis, not to say that they're the same players, they're not, but I do think there is some similarities. And I looked at the rest of the roster and it's like salary-wise, yeah, Kuminga has 1 year, $24 million, and like he's got to be involved in the deal. Then all of a sudden to try and make up some other salary, like it's probably got to be Dyson Daniels as well at 25. Now you're at about $50 million. You still got to come up with some salary. So I felt like you're kind of gutting a little bit of the team, but I think Rishache is definitely in the deal just because he's another number one pick. They've kind of now brought up a few different top picks, but he's got to be in the deal. So yeah, you could probably find a way salary wise, but it would have to be like I would think like a pick heavy type of deal because you're lacking that like player that Milwaukee could potentially build around. I would say because Kuminga, I've been vocal. I've liked him in the past. He ain't what we've hoped he would be. So
Yeah.
Atlanta, they would be, I think, not to say a fun team because nothing would be fun about having Giannis in the East, but they would be, I feel like, a coolish type team where you could be like, man, they're dangerous, they're fun to watch, they're a little bit exciting, and they're up and coming. I think you add Giannis to that group, they're definitely taking that next step.
Yeah. All right. So who did you have at number 2, or are you at number 3?
This would be my number 3. So
Okay.
number 3, I got the Detroit Pistons.
They're a sleeper team. I didn't have them on my list, but they are a sleeper team.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, I think it's good that we have different lists. I think that's just, fun to be able to have different talking points. For the Pistons, if you're telling me that you're combining Cade and Giannis,
Yeah.
it instantly becomes one of the best duos out there in the league. I mean, you're talking about Cade had a shot at being an MVP. He was an MVP candidate this year. He was. They were obviously the 1 seed, and now you're talking about adding Giannis to the group. So I feel like that is really interesting, and I do think that for Detroit, while like salary-wise, it's a little bit tricky, they have young players. Like you could do a sign and trade. Jalen Duren could be involved in there. There's Asar Thompson is a young player that I feel like that Milwaukee would definitely covet. There's other salary pieces you can add in there. You could throw some other young players like Ron Holland that I feel like Detroit can easily pass up on. But I do think that for Detroit, if you just had that combo of Cade and Giannis, that is enough to strike fear into teams, and then you could worry about what else you're going to do from like a Jalen Duren type standpoint, if you're going to bring him back or not, or maybe it makes him far more expendable because he's a really hard player to put your finger on of what he's going to be able to make this offseason.
Yeah, I definitely think Detroit, they're a very interesting team because right now it feels like they're missing something. And
They are.
they've made trades before with Milwaukee as well. Detroit has in previous years. I mean, Chris Middleton, right, was previously with the Pistons as like a guy off the bench.
Bad trade for them.
Yeah, I mean,
really set up the Bucks.
Right, and I think this is maybe, hey, this is our, hey, we gave you Middleton to get a championship, give us Giannis to get a championship for us. No, I'm kidding, but there are a lot of pieces that make a lot of sense. I do think Jalen Duren being an sign and trade as the center of the deal could make some sense, just because it seems like the two are very far off in what they want to come to an agreement
think
with.
so.
And the way Jalen just kind of, tailed off in the playoffs.
Faded away.
Yeah.
Disappeared.
I mean, it was bad.
He might have had the worst, like, finish to the season of any player that had a really good regular season. Like, there's a couple guys who really fell off, but when you're heading towards that contract, like, all you got to do is finish strong in the playoffs. Like, if you finish strong, you're a made man. Now I think you start to have those second thoughts of like, is Jalen Duren a $200 million guy? Like, once you commit that, like, now all of a sudden the Pistons start to now lock in on like what their team's going to be. So I do think that you want to enter the Giannis sweepstakes, now is probably the time to do it. Even though for the Bucks, it complicates things to have Miles Turner signed to that contract extension, but maybe you find a way to trade him elsewhere.
I think that Miles Turner is a gifted enough center that teams that are trying to contend would be able to talk themselves into him fitting in better with their team. I do see that, even though I know he had a really rough year last year. I think that there's going to be more upside and than people are giving him credit for. Now, it's not going to be for much. It'll be like bad players back. They're not going to get anything out of it. But I think, like, for example, we know that the Celtics have like a 27.7 traded player exception they could use to acquire him, and they could send like a Sam Hauser back or something like along those lines to Milwaukee. That could really help a team like Milwaukee get off that contract, and then it also helps Boston get a stretch big, which they clearly were much better at as a team when they had an Al Horford or a Kristaps Porzingis. So I think that's on the table, and I would also don't rule out Charlotte. I think Charlotte could be in the Miles Turner sweepstakes. We've already seen them before, like Turner, for years.
We have.
And
that is true. They definitely had a crush on Miles Turner for 2 to 3 years. And just to your point before, is like that trade exception is just enough to swallow up Miles Turner. Turner does have a 15% trade kicker, so that actually might complicate things.
He might waive it to go to the Celtics. I think he would.
Yeah, I think he would have to waive that. I think he would be happy to do that because I think he sees Milwaukee as like the Titanic right now. Like that ship's going
maybe
down.
the grass will be greener in Boston. That would make a little more sense. But
that man's always concerned about the grass, so I think that it's definitely possible it's greener there.
But they would have to trade something back to the Bucks because they cannot become a hard apron team by doing that, or a first apron team by doing that. So they'd be hard capped by the first apron, which means they couldn't make that deal unless they gave something back. But I do think Charlotte's team to keep an eye on. I think Josh Green, Grant Williams are both expiring contracts, and they have 2 picks in the draft, 14 and 18. So would like pick 18 plus Grant Williams and Josh Green for Miles Turner make sense for a Charlotte team trying to contend? I think that there's a world where that makes some sense. And then you include, just looking at it from that perspective, like it's good for the Bucks because they get off the contract, and then the Hornets.
It is. At this point,
They still keep their 14th overall pick. They get Miles. They have Diabate. Like, it just gives them a little bit more versatility. Kalkbrenner's on the roster at the center spot. But anyway, we're not talking about Turner. We're talking about Giannis. So I just think that with Giannis in Detroit, it's interesting. But, like, it's just who else would they give up in this deal? Because there's not a lot of players on this roster that are like, ooh, I want to see what they can do. Like, a Danis Jenkins only makes $4 million. Is that really going to move the needle? No. Like, Ron Holland is like a okay player, but like
I don't believe in him. Yeah,
if it's not a Sarr and or Jalen Duren, do they even have enough? I mean, and they could trade all their picks. I mean, that's the other thing. They have all their picks set up that they could trade, but if they're going to have Giannis and Cade, like I would not expect those picks to be very good. So
no, I wouldn't. And they probably need a third team to facilitate.
They got a ton of seconds. Good grief! Have you seen how many second round picks they have?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. So
I mean,
they
5
probably,
in the next 2 drafts, not including this one.
Which means that they'll be making moves because, like, no one, we've seen teams at times trade 4 second-round picks, in a deal or anything like that. So, yeah.
14 second-round picks all the way up to 2033.
Like, that is an absurd amount of second-round picks,
Jesus.
They'll find the right deal at some point, and I do think that, like, they're not going to be able to pay all these young players. So, someone will have to get dealt, and I think that they know that, like, this is their – not to say their window, but like, hey, you were just the 1 seed. Like you gotta add to this team. So we'll see. But number 2 on my list, or did you did your number 3?
I haven't done my number 2 yet. So go ahead. But go ahead.
Yeah. So for number 2, I went back and forth on number 1 and 2. This that. I went with Boston at number 2.
Okay.
So
we're different.
Okay. I originally had Boston at 1. I made the switch at a game time decision right before we hopped on. I thought to myself, if Boston gets Giannis, like, wow. But then I thought to myself, salary-wise, you'd have to part with probably Jaylen Brown. I really think that he would be like he's basically an exact salary match. And I know I've already said this like a broken record. He might be the best player you can get back, to be honest. But like, he's actually, if you want to stay competitive, he is someone like right now that is in his prime. So it could be Jaylen Brown and numerous first-round picks. Now, I don't think that it would be Jaylen Brown and 4 first-round picks or anything because Jaylen Brown is a very good player. But I do still think it could be Jaylen Brown and maybe 2 first-round picks. That's definitely a possibility. It's a longer contract for Jaylen Brown than it is for Giannis. But I just think that there's no way that you would be able to do this deal with like, any other player on this contract, on this team for Boston. It just salary-wise becomes very, very tough unless you're going to bring in a third team. But I also just felt like if you have a healthy Tatum and you have Giannis, that's enough to make a lot of noise in the East.
Yeah, I mean, you would still have Derek White. I mean, You're basically just saying, hey, we're giving up Jaylen for Giannis. And there's a world where you could say that Jaylen's better than Giannis. I mean, people might argue
he's
that.
Younger. He's 2 years younger. He's under contract for an extra year. He's healthier. Yeah, I mean, you could definitely make an argument. Yeah, that's why I just feel like it's not going to be Jaylen Brown and a boatload of picks. It could be almost kind of maybe even similar to like the Luka for Anthony Davis type of trade where it's like a 1 really good player for another good player and there's probably like a first-round pick in there, maybe 2.
Maybe Jaylen Brown goes to Portland, and then Portland sends all of the Bucks picks back to Milwaukee plus players to kind of fill in. I don't know what the players would be, but
Grant,
because I could see Portland wanting to go in and go get like you throw a Drew Holiday back in the trade. Poor Drew Holiday just getting drug around, but Maybe a Shaden Sharp would be interesting. Tamani Kamara, he's got a new contract. I'm just throwing some stuff out there, but you could make a deal work with the Celtics that doesn't include Jaylen Brown. It would be a lot of depth, but it would be Derek White, Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, and Baylor Shireman.
That's kind of when I was going through this, I thought to myself, like, man, you're really gutting a lot of this roster, but at the same point, like, that's what happens when you have a big three.
Yeah.
You have a big three, you don't have much else. Like, that is traditionally what has happened in the NBA is, like, you think of, like, LeBron, Bosh, Wade, and then it's like, okay, who's the fourth? Mario Chalmers, and stuff like that. Like, yeah, there's gonna be a drop off. So if Boston was somehow able to do that and they would empty the clip and offer up every first round pick that they could, and Derek White, it definitely is someone that is better if he's not like a fourth option or, anything like a third, fourth option. So like, maybe he could be a little bit better, but I just felt like, is that the best trade package that Milwaukee could get? I don't know. There's probably one or so more featured players, like some of the guys that I mentioned earlier, that could be a little bit more enticing for the longer run.
I apologize. I was in this current year's salary, so you could actually do it for just White, Hauser, and Pritchard for Antetokounmpo and still keep like your Shiremans and those type of players. But I don't know. I think if you take Peyton Pritchard out and maybe try to combine some more players like Hugo Gonzalez and Delano Banton, could that make it work? I'm just gonna play with it to see what it does.
I think it's still a little bit.
So you could do that. You could do a 5-for-1 where it's Shireman, Banton, Gonzalez, Hauser, and White, and you're still keeping Peyton Pritchard with Brown, Tatum, and Giannis. I think that could be interesting. And then of course they have Nia Mosqueda, who's also a starter. So there's a player that's their big five, and then Ron Harper Jr., who got the start in Game 7. He's right there off the bench with Jordan Walsh. So I'm just saying, like, they could do it where they don't have to blow it up. And I just think that's what makes Boston so scary. And that's why I have them number 1 on my team, just because, like, I think most people would say fully healthy, Jason Tatum and Giannis are the 2 best players in the East. Yeah. You can't say Joel Embiid anymore because he just isn't healthy.
You just can't. You can't.
I think those 2 are like the front runners for like the 2 best in the East. Mm-hmm. You put those 2 together, that to me is just very, very scary. No matter how you look at it, Jaylen Brown or no Jaylen Brown, because I think Derek White's really good. I think Peyton Pritchard's really good. Sam Hauser's very, very good as a shooter. So they just have pieces, and they're obviously going to make moves, especially if you said like the salary matches, they can make more moves. So that to me is why I have them number 1. But I'm sure who you had number 1 is probably who I had number 2.
Probably because like I said, I went back and forth. I'm going with the New York Knicks just because here's a team that's already in the NBA Finals. And then when I look at it, if you want to make this trade work, Cat and Giannis are almost identical salary-wise.
Yep, that's what the trade would be.
Yeah, so you do Cat and you empty the clip in terms of draft picks that you got. Like you throw them all in there, every pick that you got. Now you're all out of picks, but you're now having a roster that's like Jalen Brunson, OG, Giannis, you got Mikal Bridges, and like all that, and like that's a really good roster at that point. That's a scary roster in the East, and I just feel like, man, if they're already in the NBA Finals without Giannis, like Cat has his deficiencies, and I didn't even mention Josh Hart. There's other players that would be on this, maybe even Deuce McBride that like make this team still very deep. So it's rare to be able to have the salary to match up with Giannis. That's also like a player that a team might be interested in. It'd be interesting to see that like, all of a sudden now you do have a bit of a problem with Cat and Miles Turner on the same roster making an absurd amount of money, but that is where this becomes just clearly like a bigger deal where Turner has to get shipped elsewhere at that point. You're not just going to be having committed, $57 million to Cat, about $27 million to Turner, and then another like $22 million in dead money from Dame. I just feel like at that point that is a mess, but the Knicks would be very scary.
Yeah, so I think they would be scary, but they would be a different level of scary because I think that they're taking away the stretch element of a big would really hurt their team. And I also think, because if you think about it, like Brunson is an isolation player, and it would probably be like a back and forth of, okay, Brunson's turn versus Giannis's turn. It would never be like, hey, Giannis can spread the floor for Brunson, so, okay, is he going to sit in the dunker spot? Like, what's going to happen when Brunson's got the ball in his hands? I don't love the fit, but it's just a lot of talent altogether.
It's a lot of talent.
So that's why I think, like, can they make it work? Probably so. They could do a trade flash where they don't have to include Karl Anthony Towns, which I think would actually be a little bit better potentially for the Knicks, because I think he's their second best player, no matter what anybody wants to say. Like OG Anunoby, he can't stay healthy most of the time. Josh Hart can be played off the floor. Mikal Bridges is extremely overrated in my opinion. I think he's a good player, but
I completely overrated. I look back on
Yeah.
the times that we debated trading for him. The man was exposed as being the best player on a really bad team.
yeah, I mean, even with
Like,
Phoenix, I think people liked him because it's a 3-and-D, and it's like, oh, well, look at this guy, he can do this. He's good, but he's like the fourth or fifth option on this team for a reason. So you could trade Bridges, Hart, and Alvarado for Giannis, and I think that's interesting. So now it's OG, Karl Anthony Towns, Giannis, Jalen Brunson, and then Deuce McBride. Like, that's a pretty good five.
it is.
And you include Landry Shamet with that, coming back on on a new contract, probably still having to find a bunch of other guys to bring back on the minimum, but still they're trying to win a championship, and whether they win a championship or not in this NBA Finals, who knows what they're going to do. But if they lose and they realize they don't have the Wemby stopper, maybe they feel like Giannis is that Wemby stopper. So I they could be very dangerous, but at the same time, something about him in Boston just makes me fear a little bit more, because I just see Boston as always like a notch above New York. And
And that is what I was carrying on for a while. There's something about, like, the Celtics. It's like they're like Lakers mystique to them, where it's like when they make a move, oh man, like the Lakers, like wow, they're bad. But the Celtics, like they have that compared to the Knicks, where it's called like it is. I mean, it's the first time the Knicks have been in an NBA Finals in over 25 years. Like the
yeah,
Knicks don't have a history of being good in our lifetime.
yeah.
They were a very solid team in the 90s, but like come on, man. It's been 30 years. Like, I think at that point, you can't be holding on to what Patrick Ewing did, back then. I feel like the Celtics have had teams of whether it was, back then with Garnett, or whether it's winning a championship with Tatum, or whether it's, them coming up short. Like, it's like they've had good teams over the last, 15, 20 years. And I think that there is something about if Boston makes the move, I think you almost kind of take it a little bit more seriously of like, yep, there they go, the coach of the year, this year and Joe Mazzulla. And I just feel like you would take them probably a little bit more serious than the Knicks. And if the Knicks win it all, maybe that's a different story. Maybe now you're looking at, hey, this is the defending champs that just went out there and got Giannis. Or maybe there's a scenario where because they won the championship, it makes no sense to make this type of trade. But that's why I struggled with 1 and 2.
It's tough. It's tough, but I think we both agree that these are the two
Yes.
most feared teams in the East, with or without Giannis, for the Pacers. And then, of course, if you add one of the best players, not the best player in the East, to that team, well, duh, it's going to make it more difficult. But I, I, I don't know. I'm excited to see how it all plays out. I think the Pacers maybe kind of have to wait and see. This is one we haven't really talked about, but I want to just kind of wrap it up here with this. If the Pacers are like adamant about bringing this core 7 back, okay, that's cool. Like they want to try to win with this group. But if they see a team like the Knicks or the Celtics make a move like that, does it force them, or at least push them a little bit to thinking, oh God, we need more size. Oh, we need more scoring. We need more of this to counter that, to be more aggressive, to make a win now trade, like a Trey Murphy the third, which we talked about earlier this week. Would a Giannis trade to the Celtics or the Knicks make the Pacers become a little bit more aggressive? And
I
I don't
hope
know
so.
if they made that kind of trade where you sent Bridges and Hart to Milwaukee, would you then maybe look at trading for one of those guys from the Bucks?
Yeah, I honestly do. I really do feel like Hart would be more of the guy I'd probably be interested in just
He
because I
hates
feel like
Indiana though.
yeah, I know. I definitely remember that interview. But he's the type of guy you hate to play against, you love to play with. He does a little bit of everything, and I just feel like I'm not comparing him to TJ McConnell, but he does have a little bit of that, like, this guy's gonna give you everything that he's got, and he's gonna play way past his size. Josh Hart, I think inch for inch is, like, maybe the best rebounder in this league. Like, that guy, what he does at his height is pretty unmatched. So I think I would have a little bit more interest, then also he's just cheaper.
Yeah. So this is a fun conversation. I love it. I'm seeing more stuff every time I pull my phone up on Twitter. This is the time of year where you're starting to see a lot of, oh, there's smoke around here, there's smoke around
Yep.
here, and then that usually means nothing of that's going to happen. So we'll just have to wait and see. If I'm the Bucks, I'm taking the best trade package possible. I'm not trading Giannis where he wants to go, even though
No.
he is the face of the franchise. They got to do his best for their franchise at the end of the day. So I don't know if the Celtics or the Knicks have the best trade package, and that's why I think the Heat are one of those teams that
maybe.
they got a lot of young players with Khalil Ware, Jovic. Who's the other?
Tyler Hero is someone you mentioned
Jaquez
before,
Jr..
Tommy Jaquez. Yeah,
Well,
like
Hero just makes the money work. He's expiring. He's from
yeah.
Milwaukee, so like that
But, like,
makes sense.
if you wanna field a playoff team, you stay very competitive with that group. Like, you have now enough players where, like, you could fill in your Ryan Rollins and, and some other players that I mean, it's still the Bucks still have their issues, and they should probably clean house with some of those older guys, like, probably wanna trade, like, a Kuzma and Bobby Portis and those players, but I think there's enough players there that you could fill in the gaps and have, like, competitive team, I would say. But overall, though, this is fun. There's definitely some things to discuss, some things to fear. I definitely don't fear the deer anymore,
I was waiting
but
for
I
that one.
fear where Giannis could land and make a team that much better. Because if Giannis goes to any team in the East, you could make the argument they're now just a favorite, straight up, just all of a sudden. But the teams that we just mentioned, those are already 5 playoff teams. Like,
Yeah,
even if we had different lists, they were playoff teams. So
yeah.
that's the scary part about it, is it's not like he's forcing a trade to the Brooklyn Nets or the Washington Wizards where you start to go, "Okay, but, like, what's the next move?" It's like, nope, that is the move that makes the team over the hump.
Yeah, I think the one team that probably is a little bit of a sleeper we didn't talk about is the Hornets. We talked about them for a Miles Turner
Yeah,
trade. I debated putting them in here as like a sleeper team
I
because
I I debated it too. I did. It's just I
Con
feel like
Canepo, LaMelo Ball, there's stuff there to
Look up
like.
Bridges. I mean, you gotta trade someone, so obviously it's like who knows who's really in
Brandon
that.
Miller, duh, I forgot about him. So
Yeah, and maybe there's even a scenario that, like, could LaMelo Ball be the featured piece? Like,
maybe, but I just think he would need a point guard like that to really set
I know,
things up.
I know, I definitely agree with it, but if you wanna make salaries, like, work, LaMelo Ball makes about $41 million, so he's, like, could be a big piece, and I also just feel like we've mentioned this, if you're the Hornets, how far could you go if LaMelo's the guy? Like, if
Well,
he's
that's
the
why he would be like
face
the
of
third guy.
well, that's but I'm just saying, but if he's, like, the face of the franchise or on the team or this, like, there's just, like I just imagine, like, the Hornets locker room has, like, it produces the energy that LaMelo Ball produces, and I just feel like that might not be the best energy for your locker room, and sometimes I feel like you gotta get those guys out just so everyone else could, like, be on the same page, and, it's definitely a young group that, like, needs a little bit of, like, a locker room change, and I feel like you get LaMelo Ball out of there. What if Ryan Rollins is included, in the deal? I mean, that could be something where he played well at
Sure.
point guard. Maybe you find another point guard elsewhere, but I do think salary wise, like LaMelo Ball and Josh Green, all of a sudden that pretty much makes the trade work salary wise.
Yeah, I kind of like them going a little bit deeper, Foch. I have a trade here that works financially for
Ooh,
both sides.
yeah,
Miles Bridges, Josh Green, Grant Williams, and then Saloon, who they took like 5th overall like
that
3 years
guy's
ago.
sick.
He's
Yeah,
terrible for Giannis and Bobby Portis. I mean, that is like that right there. I'm obviously going to give up all your picks
oh,
if you're the
ever.
Hornets, but like still, that's a really good team. If you're talking LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, Con Canepo, Giannis, Bobby Portis, Diabate. You got Pat Connaughton, who's there, who is a hangover from the Bucks team that knows Giannis and those guys pretty well. And you still have Trey Mann on the roster as well as a bench guy, Sion James, Kalkbrenner, Diabate. I think there's enough pieces there to like you got to take them seriously. And so that would be the kind of move I would be aggressive trying to make if I'm Charlotte. And if I'm Milwaukee and they have a lot of stuff like, especially those future picks because they've got Charlotte's, Dallas, or they got Miami's 2027 first. Cleveland's 29 first. I mean, they've got a lot of
Charlotte
stuff.
owns 24 picks moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
The Bucks own 7. Like, it's just,
Oh, they
you know,
got so many
eh,
seconds. It's ridiculous.
yeah, I mean, it's like it's 7 picks for the Bucks, but they're all swaps for the most part. It's like really it's just they are in such a rough spot. So I feel like yeah, for Charlotte, I mean, there's definitely an opportunity to, trade a bunch of draft capital in the next few years where that 2027 Dallas pick is just top 2 protected.
Yeah, and they got a 27 Miami that's lottery protected, but
yep. They own
it's
their
just
2028
interesting.
first, 29, and so on. Yeah.
They've got I think it's 14 seconds and 12 first they can trade. So
Crazy.
that's pretty rare, and I think that's just a sleeper team to keep an eye on. But we've talked enough about this. It'll be interesting to see where Giannis goes. We are not a Bucks podcast, but it does impact the Pacers potentially with where he does land. So with that being said, Pacer Nation, hope you all had a fun time listening to our conversation. If there's a team you felt like we didn't include that we should have included, let us know in the comment section below here on YouTube. But Facci, as we sign off here, anything else you want to add before we say goodbye?
Yeah, ship him out west. All right. So get Giannis out of the conference. It'd make our lives a lot easier. I know we've had some good playoff success against them lately, but I mean, if the man needs a change of scenery, and if it is in the East, it's only going to make things that much harder.
Absolutely, Facci. So with that being said, Pacer Nation, hope you all have a great rest of your week. Facci and I'll be back on Monday. No episode tomorrow for the Pacers side of things, but hope you all enjoyed the 4 episodes this week. But with that being said, we'll talk to you all next week, Pacers-wise. And Facci, you know how we close this show out. Let the Pacer fans know those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers.